I recently happened to come across your LinkedIn page where you had said that your experience in the information systems and technology management was shaped while you were working within the South African financial sectors. So from the year of 2003. Could you share with us a few words about your career path to the current role and what are your primary responsibilities that you handle now?
Sure. Yeah, Shruti. So I think from a career path perspective, I've always been in financial services. So I started off at you know um, one of the big banks in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, South Africa is sort of like one of the big economic hubs in Africa. So the banking sector, like the major banks in South Africa, are also the major banks across the whole continent.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I mean, it's just moved between EBSA, FNB, Standard Bank, and then the insurance company that I'm currently working in, which is Liberty Life. But essentially, Liberty Life is owned by Standard Bank as well. So we're still part of the banking family. It's just the area is a bit more in the sort of insurance industry, but still within the financial services sector. Um, and I think for me, the career path has always been um, it's always been technology related. So I've always worked either as a programmer on operational systems where I had to code solutions for operational systems. Back in the day, it was the old languages like COBOL and C.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, as technology moved on and progressed, I also started making the shift. And at some point in the career, um, I sort of just specialized in data management.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved out of the programming in operational systems and started doing development on decision support systems, basically your data warehouses, and then your analytics environment, like where you build using tools like Power BI, for example. Um, the responsibilities in the current environment, so it's more a leadership role where I oversee two areas. The one area being platforms,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and platforms is where we sort of address all the business requirements for the business area we work in, to deliver their operational processes. So for example, in human capital, someone might come to us and say they want an onboarding system to onboard new employees,
Mm-hmm.
or someone might say they want a learning management system to disseminate learning content to staff, and then myself and my team would go about sort of, making that happen. Um, and then the other area is the data and analytics area where the team deals largely with producing data for ad hoc extracts for people who just have ad hoc requests, or some people have more predefined reporting requirements, or even analytics requirements. And that's largely the responsibility now. So I mean, I've got people that work in the team that do some development, business analysis, project management, and then there's a cross-functional team that we work closely with, that also provides us with the more technical, specialized skills that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If we need an ABAP programmer, we will then connect with the cross-functional team in IT. If we need probably a data architect, we would then connect with our architecture team within the broader IT division in our company.
Mm-hmm.
And in a nutshell, I think that's it for just my career path in the current responsibilities.
That's definitely interesting, and Thank you for sharing it. So, with a very strong background in both the data and the fintech space, I would love to get your opinion on the relationship between the fintech and the data industry. So, do you think that the rise of data technologies played a vital role in the fintech industry?
Yeah, very much. I mean, you know, so I mean, I always look at the financial services sector as a sector that sits right in the center of the the economic flow of money in any country, right?
Mhm.
How money, you know, is injected into the economy, or how money within that particular country's economy, leaves the economy.
Mhm.
Um, at the heart of it is your financial services sector, and generally government as well, right?
Okay.
Um, and if you look at, when you just think about it from that perspective, that this sector does sit at the heart of the economic circular flow of money, and essentially what is the product of this company. I mean, if I go to a dealership, right, my product is the cars that's standing on the floor in the dealership. You
Yeah.
know, if I go to a company like Revlon,
Mhm.
my product is the creams and whatever else Revlon manufactures.
Yeah.
So essentially, if companies like that are looking to manage their stock, they would need a sort of a warehouse to house the cars. In a dealership's case, they would need a warehouse to house whatever their creams or whatever it is that they produce,
Yeah.
so that they could distribute that to the public, right? Now, in
Yeah.
the financial services sector, um, that product is essentially data.
Yeah.
It's essentially data. The data, and so that's why financial services businesses have to invest in their form of warehouses, which is traditionally large data centers that set 5 floors in the basement of their head office buildings.
True.
So most of the head office buildings, about 4 or 5 floors down, you'd have these large data centers, and that's essentially their warehouse that's storing their stock item, which is essentially data. Okay, now with modernization, they can actually relieve themselves of those costs and invest in having their warehouses stored in the cloud.
Yeah.
So for me, whenever I look at the financial services sector and the fact that it sits at the heart of the economic circular flow of money, and the fact that its core stock item that it needs to manage so well is in fact data. That's for me what I see as the relationship between the data world and the financial world, and how sort of tightly coupled those two worlds are. You can't
Yeah.
get away from it. Um, so the role I think that data technologies are playing within the financial services sector is absolutely critical. It's for me the bread and butter of the financial services sector. It's strategic, for them to compete against each other, and it's core to how well they manage it, and what insights they can draw out of it and make it work for them. Actually talks to the level of the experience that they can give to their customers.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So I think that's it in a
I
nutshell.
Yeah, true. I totally agree on that with you. So, having said that, data being the core of the financial sector, you do have a lot of day-to-day expansion when it comes to data. So, um, can you explain some of the key challenges that you face on a daily basis while handling data? Maybe at your organization, from that point of view, it would maybe give us a clear picture of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think for me, whenever I'm asked a question like this, my answer never changes. The biggest issue is data quality.
True.
It's the biggest challenge. And I think I probably get to have a good experience of how data quality um, hurts the whole data initiative,
Yeah.
uh, because the organizations I've always worked in have been very large organizations, or should I say, not like fairly large, 50,000 employees, 30,000 employees. They massive companies. Their assets under management is amongst the largest in the economy in our country. So they sort of like these big corporate machines. And I think for me, there's always been this challenge around having, sound processes, challenges around people being trained, also adequately, and challenges around creating more sort of literacy around data in the organization, um, and also challenges around having sort of a common appreciation of the value of dealing and handling with data within the organization. And I think those challenges are what for me causes the issue of data quality issues. So that's for me being the biggest challenge. I mean, it's
Mhm.
crazy to see how much of people's time in their day-to-day gets spent towards actually having to clean the data that they need to work with before actually harvesting it, right? And deriving the true value out of it. Um, so, I always say, from a cost perspective, I say to many people in the organization, so we pay people salaries to do a job,
Yeah.
right? And then we pay other people salaries to do cleanup on the work of the first group of people that we paying to do a job. So it's like you got this, this double cost, so there isn't an optimal use of time. So definitely I would say that for me is the biggest challenge. Yeah, I mean, there are other challenges. I mean, I think if I had to just mention one other one, it's the
Mhm.
challenge around getting access to data. So because there's so much security, people, especially in the financial business, um, the different departments sort of, they secure the data so tightly that even if you're working within the same company, to get access to a certain data set from a certain department, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of, you know, boxes that need to be ticked before you can just literally get access to the data. And besides that form of access, there's another form of access that also hurts us. And that other form of access is, um, they don't often have a standard technology in place to physically pull the data,
Yeah.
you know. So you'll often find that people will be like, okay, fine, I'll send you a spreadsheet over SharePoint, and it doesn't really always work for us. For people who work with data, we generally need to plug into directly to the data source so that we can actually pull vast volumes.
Yeah.
Sending me 10 sort of Excel files that I have to still source into my database, it's just a nightmare. It's just too slow. It takes too long, and yeah, it's just. I think so. For me, those are the two challenges. It's more
Mm.
around access and availability of data, and the actual quality of it.
Okay, that's. I think I completely agree on that, and even from our perspective, because we see ourselves solving that, and that's our main one of the main pain points that we solve, I would say, because we also feel that the right set of data needs to be accessible to the business departments too, because this way you also reduce the number of support tickets that flows to the data department, and you can also focus, while they can focus on the value generation or development of the product, and the business departments have the accessibility to the right data, and they do not have to depend on the data department for every small issues, I would say.
Yes.
So so adding to that, you had initially talked about the data quality, as in that's one of the biggest challenges. And I don't know if you have come across our previous interviews. Even the other interviewees would say that that's one of the major issue. So having talked about that, does your company rely on third-party APIs? Because we know that sometimes the data that they serve might be completely in an unexpected state. So how do you make sure that it does not break your applications or processes? Do you have a monitoring tool that can clean up in advance? As in, do you have any software that you use especially for that?
So it's not. It's so the answer is yes, we do have, but very inconsistent. So there'll be a certain area specifically in payroll that decide, okay, we're going to employ a tool called Payroll Control Center that works very nicely with SAP, and it allows us to build in data quality rules. But then there's other areas, which is the vast majority of the organization, that just doesn't use any tools.
Okay.
So I mean, the answer is yes, but it's yes, I think, from a perspective of a handful of departments.
Okay, that's true. So coming to the next question, which I would like to tilt it in a little different direction, is about data culture. So do you think that a data-driven culture is something that exists in your company, or do you think that they are on the way to get one? What's your say on that?
So actually, in the current organization where I'm working, largely the answer is no. I wouldn't say there's a data-driven culture. I would say that, I mean, yes, again, in a very few select specific divisions, the maturity of that will be high. But in the majority of the company, it's very low. So the decision making is made very much on looking at past data from a reporting perspective, more your diagnostic type of diagnostic and descriptive type of reporting analytics. So it's a combination of decision making made based on monthly reports or weekly reports, and then coupled with that, the leaders rely also on their own subjectivity and experience, their experience in the industry. So in terms of decision making that is more prescriptive, more predictive, it's minimal. It's minimal.
Okay, got it. So I'm a little curious to know about more about your data team at your organization. So how big is your data team? Is it split into two, or is it just one? Because we've heard where data teams are being split into two, where one focus on the value generation of the project, while the other focuses on the tickets, the support tickets that come from the customers or from the internal departments. So how is that being structured at your organization?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because the answer to this question does very much depend on the different pressures that the organization experiences, right? So in our organization at the moment, we have significant budget constraints, right?
Okay.
It just got bought over, the majority shares just got bought over of our company by Standard Bank.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Standard Bank always owned our company as a major shareholder of about 54%, and the
Mm-hmm.
remaining 46%, they finally bought the rest of that over in February this year.
Okay.
So our company is actually going through a transition where we're integrating now into the Standard Bank structure.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously when you have that kind of situation, you're less likely to make big investments because you don't know,
Yeah.
am I going to move my systems over to Standard Bank, and are we just going to inherit their technologies, which makes sense because we would save a lot of costs,
Mm-hmm.
or are we going to operate as an independent entity and still run our own systems? Because if we are, then we can start having budgetary conversations and planning projects and so forth. So that's where we are as a business. And I think with that context, right, one of the biggest challenges we have is, so I run a platform and data team that
Mm-hmm.
actually sits in a business function, right? So I sit in human capital, and then in a more centralized area, we've got a data chapter, right?
Okay.
And there's a head for that data chapter, right? So I work very closely with this lady, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so in my team, we would do development, yes, um, and we would do support as well,
Okay.
right? Because I'm sitting in a business function. However, in the centralized data team, they more likely there in that team to have people who would then focus on just the development stuff, and some
Mm-hmm.
people who then also focus more on the support and maintenance type of work, right? But for the purpose of cross skilling, because remember, sometimes people also want to experience different experiences. They would then swap them. Sometimes give a support person a small project to do new development so that they could also get some growth.
Yeah.
And that's typically how it works in our organization.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's big projects that I, from a human capital perspective, would like to drive. Let's say I want to take my SQL data warehouse from on-premise, and I want to move everything to AWS cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I would then have to actually budget for that,
Yeah.
and bring in the right skills and whatever we need, together with the head in the centralized data chapter, so that the work actually gets delivered from that area.
Okay.
But the budgeting would come from us, from the business side, and the people would get managed in the centralized data team.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, my relationship with them is more sort of an indirect reporting line, sort of like a matrix, because in that relationship, they would see me as the business customer.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's how it's structured. And from a DevOps perspective, um, largely people would do both.
Okay. So, having talked about the structure and how things work within the departments, there's one thing that I would like to ask regarding the security standards and compliance. So, I also assume that in the financial industry, you do pay a special attention to security standards and compliance. So, what are the most important points you pay attention to while experimenting with new technologies and products? Because maybe you need to have requirements that they need to comply with, right?
Yes. So the main one that really drives a lot of our data protection
Mm-hmm.
considerations was something we called POPIA, POPIA, which is the
Okay.
Protection of Personal Information Act.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to the I think GDPR from Europe, right?
Yeah.
In fact, the two acts are very aligned. So, for example, from South Africa, if I'm going with a cloud service provider who houses their data center in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
my South African laws accepts that.
Okay.
But if I'm going with a cloud service provider who houses the data center in the United States, South African laws won't accept that.
Okay.
Because we find that, I mean, when we compare our data protection laws, the European GDPR is a lot more aligned to the POPI Act, and like, for example, we'd find the compliance, the regulatory laws on data protection in the States a little bit, we find it a little bit thinner.
Okay.
So I mean, that's just like for us a key sort of act that we look at. From a security perspective, yeah, it's incredibly tight. I mean, we've got full on information security team.
Mm-hmm.
They manage our security, through whatever firewalls, whitelisting of IP addresses. Any cloud platform that we go through goes through a complete cloud onboarding sort of process
Mm-hmm.
with a specific cloud broker team, and then obviously everything that they sort of put in or build into to secure data and access to data would be then aligned with the POPI Act. Even simple data sharing within the organization between business users is also very tightly managed. So we wouldn't have people just emailing an Excel file with raw data from one business user to another. That wouldn't happen. They would place it in a central location somewhere, maybe a shared drive or maybe a SharePoint online in Office 365. Make sure that relevant accesses are given to that particular folder, and then rather share that link with the user, so the user would then
Yeah.
access that via link.
Yeah, that was indeed great to know. And yes, it do require a lot of tight restrictions to keep everything secured. So I think, yes, we have come to the end of our interview session. So thank you very much for taking time and joining with us today. So, yeah.
It's my pleasure, Shruti.